Do you know why you're here? I don't. 거짓말하지 마. We found something. Name, Amina Eze.
No! Let me go!
This is just the beginning.
Please, stop! This wasn't an accident.
Hold on, Amina, they're still on us!
A mafia boss? Are you insane?
If you want to live, stay low. They're inside.
Why are they after me?
Because your family survived Destroy. Don't move.
Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment below.
Amina Okoro had learned early on that silence was a better companion than trust. The apartment was quiet tonight, the hum of the city outside barely slicing through the thin walls. Her laptop flickered, casting a bluish glow on her tired face. She wasn't tired because she had spent the day in class or at the lab, she was tired because she had spent years pretending everything was fine. Pretending she had a family she could call hers. Pretending that the fire that took everything from her was an accident. But tonight, nothing felt like pretending. The first clue came in the form of a simple envelope, unmarked, shoved under her door like a careless whisper. No return address, no signature. Just a single sheet of paper. She tore it open and froze. The words were typed, precise, deliberate. Some fires are meant to burn forever. You weren't supposed to survive. Her stomach knotted. Cold fingers pressed against her chest as if the paper itself had weight, a warning delivered in ink. She had replayed that night countless times in her mind, the screams, the smoke, the heat that swallowed her parents. She had told herself it was an accident, a freak electrical fire. But every detail, every memory, now gnawed at her with new suspicion. How had she survived? Why had nobody else? And now, someone was telling her it wasn't an accident. Amina paced the tiny apartment. The air smelled faintly of her dinner, a burnt piece of bread she hadn't touched. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Her voice trembled. A calm, even voice replied, almost too smooth, Miss Okoro. You are, finally awake. Amina's blood ran cold. Who is this? She demanded, more out of fear than bravado. You know me. You just don't remember yet. There was a pause from her, and that was because she could hear faint sounds and deliberate footsteps in the background, maybe a door closing somewhere far away. The voice was unsettlingly familiar, and yet foreign. I don't know what you mean. A low chuckle came through the line. Of course you don't. You'll remember soon. We were promised to each other. And now, finally, the time has come. Amina's hands shook so violently she almost dropped the phone. Promised to each other? What the hell are you talking about? Her voice sharpened and cold despite the fear clawing at her. Don Park Joon-ho. That is all you need to know for now. You'll see me soon. The line went dead. She sank into her chair, her mind spinning. Don Park Joon-ho, the name stirred something in the back of her memory, something buried under years of normalcy and the grief she had shoved into boxes. She knew the name, somewhere deep, somewhere dangerous. But she didn't know why. The envelope lay on her desk, harmless and threatening at once. Her curiosity, a dangerous little creature, spiked. She picked it up, scanning the back. There, stamped faintly in the corner, was a symbol she didn't recognize. But something about it felt familiar. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't focus. The fire. The message. The name. Don Park Joon-ho. It was all tangled, like threads in a ball of wool, impossible to separate. She needed answers. Needed the truth. Needed to know who had watched her, who had threatened her, and the reason behind it. By 3 a.m., she was standing at her window, looking down at the empty street below. Streetlights flickered like tired eyes. The city didn't sleep. And maybe, just maybe, neither did danger. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden movement across the street. A figure in a dark coat paused under the yellow glow of a street lamp. Still. Waiting. Watching. She squinted, hard hammering, but it was gone in a blink, swallowed by shadows. Her apartment suddenly felt smaller, like walls were closing in. She locked the door 3 times, checked the windows, and still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was already inside her mind, threading through her fears. Then, the sound of her phone buzzing again made her jump. Another unknown number. She hesitated, a strange mixture of fear and curiosity pulling at her chest. Finally, she answered. Miss Amina, the same voice said, smoother this time, almost amused. You have questions. I have answers. Tomorrow. My estate. Noon. Come alone. Don't be late. Her fingers trembled, and she pressed them to her lips. Alone. Come alone. Every instinct screamed to run. Every logical part of her brain screamed to call the police. But another, darker part of her, the part that had survived fire, that had buried her grief under years of study and isolation, leaned forward, curious. She wouldn't run. Not yet. Because somewhere, beneath the fear, she was angry. Furious. And the fire had left a thirst she couldn't ignore, a thirst for answers, for revenge, for closure. She leaned back in her chair, letting the city lights paint shadows across her face. And she thought of her parents, the warmth of their smiles, the laughter that once filled the house. The fire had stolen them, but not her memory. Not her will. Tomorrow, she would face Don Park Joon-ho. And she would get answers. Or die trying. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text. No number. No signature. Just 3 words. You cannot hide. Amina's jaw tightened. Her pulse roared in her ears. She grabbed her coat, checking that the knives she kept in her drawer were still where she had hidden them. They were. She imagined the confrontation tomorrow, pacing herself, planning her questions, memorizing the voice in her head. Don Park Joon-ho, the man who claimed she was promised to him. Promised. A word she had never understood until now, and one that tasted bitter on her tongue. And as the night deepened, she realized that for the first time in her life, fear didn't feel like a cage. It felt like a weapon. Because someone had taken her family. Someone had dared to burn her world. And she was about to find out who. Somewhere in the dark, the city pulsed with quiet menace. And far away, behind high walls and steel gates, Don Park Joon-ho's eyes were already watching. Waiting. Calculating. Tomorrow, everything will change. And Amina Okoro had no idea just how dangerous that change would be. The night came close, heavy and thick, as if it too were holding its breath. And somewhere in that darkness, a fire that had started years ago was about to ignite again, this time, fueled by curiosity, revenge, and something hotter, stranger, more dangerous, the pull of a man who could destroy her, and maybe, in some twisted way, save her too.
The morning sun did nothing to warm Amina Okoro as she stepped out of her apartment. The city had already begun its endless rhythm, car horns, distant shouts, the faint hum of construction. But all she could feel was the weight of the envelope in her coat pocket, the memory of the voice that had whispered promises and threats, and the impossible task ahead of her. She didn't want to be here. She wanted to run, to disappear into the crowd, to dissolve into the anonymity of the city she had lived in her whole life. But curiosity, that dangerous little thing, had its claws sunk deep. And she had questions. The taxi ride was silent, the driver casting occasional glances at her through the rearview mirror. She couldn't explain why her hands shook or why the hum of the engine felt like a drum of warning. Her mind replayed the call from last night, the smooth, teasing voice of Don Park Joon-ho, a man she didn't know, and yet somehow, couldn't forget. When the taxi turned onto the private road leading to the estate, her breath caught. The mansion sprawled like a fortress, white walls gleaming under the early sun, black gates rising like dark teeth against the skyline. Security cameras tracked her every move, and she felt their gaze like 1,000 invisible eyes, evaluating, judging, waiting. The gates swung open silently. Amina's stomach clenched. There was no turning back. Inside, the estate was a world apart from the chaotic city. Marble floors gleamed, reflecting the sunlight streaming through enormous windows. Expensive art adorned the walls, and the scent of something rich, leather, cigars, faint perfume, hung in the air. Every detail screamed wealth, power, control. Amina felt herself shrink. But she reminded herself she was not a child anymore. She was a medical student. She was sharp. She had survived fire, loss, and years of quiet pain. She could survive this. A door opened, and a man appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, perfectly dressed in a dark suit that did nothing to hide the dangerous elegance in his movements. Don Park Joon-ho. Her first instinct was to turn and run. Her second was to step forward, chin lifted, because anger was easier than fear. "You're punctual," he said, his voice calm, but underneath it was something sharp, almost predatory. "Most people are late. Or scared." "I'm not here for pleasantries," Amina said, forcing her voice to be steady. "You called me here. Explain why." He smiled, a slow, almost cruel smile, and gestured for her to follow him into a sitting room. The furniture was dark, heavy, and intimidating. Every item seemed to whisper the same warning: "This is not your world." "You want answers," he said, sitting across from her as if they were negotiating a business deal, "and you will get them." But first, he paused, watching her, letting the silence stretch. "You must understand why I called you here. Why I expected you." Amina's pulse quickened. The words "expected you" felt like a punch to her chest. "Expected me? For what? For my life?" "Not exactly," he said, leaning back, hands folded over his chest. "You were promised to me. As a child. You were taken from me, taken from a destiny you don't remember." She blinked. "Promised? Destiny? Are you insane?" "Perhaps," he said, his lips twitching in a ghost of a smile. "Or perhaps, you just don't remember. But remember or not, the blood of your family is tied to my world, and my world does not forgive. Do not forget that, Miss Okoro." The words landed like stones. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. This man, the Don Park Joon-ho, was dangerous. Terrifyingly so. And yet, under that sharp, controlling exterior, there was something human. She couldn't quite place it. Something behind the mask of power, a flicker of, maybe regret. Her anger flared. "You had a family. You burned my family. You don't get to play the victim here." His eyes darkened, and for a moment, she saw the Don dissolve into a man, calm, calculating, but undeniably human. "I did not burn your family, Amina. But I know who did. And if you want justice, you will need me. Whether you like it or not." Amina swallowed. That voice, that certainty, made her heart pound in ways she didn't expect. Hate, fear, something else. Something unfamiliar. The room grew colder, or maybe it was just the tension. And then, as if to remind her that danger was never far, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the door. She froze. "Go away," Park Joon-ho said, almost lazily, but with a tone that brooked no argument. The door opened, and a sharp-faced man in black nodded at Park Joon-ho, then retreated. The faint click of a gun holster in the background made her stomach twist. "You move in a world where you cannot trust anyone," he said, his gaze locking onto hers. "And now, you are in my world. Alone." Amina's hands clenched into fists. Alone. That word rang in her ears like a warning bell. She had survived alone before. She could do it again. But the weight of his presence, magnetic, suffocating, made her heart beat faster than she wanted to admit. "You think you can survive me?" he asked, leaning forward slightly, his eyes sharp, piercing. "Because surviving me is not the same as surviving the streets, or the fire, or anyone else. I will test you. I will push you. And you will either rise or break." Her mouth opened, then closed. Words failed her. She was trembling, part fear, part anticipation, part something she refused to name. Then, just as the tension hit a breaking point, a commotion erupted outside the room. A loud crash, a shout, and the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. Park Joon-ho's head snapped toward the door, every muscle in his body taut, ready to move. Amina realized, with a sick twist in her stomach, that she had no idea who was coming, or if it was friend or enemy. Park Joon-ho's hand brushed hers, light, deliberate, gripping it just enough to anchor her. "Stay close," he murmured. And in that single touch, she felt the collision of power, danger, and something she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. The door burst open. A figure slipped inside, masked, fast, deadly. Park Joon-ho rose like a coiled tiger. "You," he growled. "You're inside my house." And just like that, Amina's world tipped sideways. The intruder moved faster than thought. A gun glinted. A scream tore through the air. And then, nothing. Amina fell back against the heavy chair, heart racing, lungs screaming. Park Joon-ho's hand found hers again, firmer this time. "You're not safe," he said. Calm. Terrifying. Protective. And suddenly, she understood, survival was no longer just her own problem. Someone in his world wanted her dead. Or worse. And the dawn she had just begun to understand was already her only chance. The city had no mercy for the lost. Its streets, alive with the roar of engines, the chatter of markets, and the indifferent gaze of strangers, seemed to mock Amina as she sat in the guest wing of Don Park Joon-ho's estate. The intruder from the previous morning haunted her thoughts. Her heart still thumped in that unpredictable rhythm of fear and adrenaline. Park Joon-ho had been silent most of the night, but she had felt his presence, moving through the hallways, checking doors, listening. She had watched him from the shadows, a predator in his element, and for reasons she refused to admit, the sight of him made her pulse race in ways that had nothing to do with fear. She pressed her palm to the cold marble windowsill, staring out at the gardens that sprawled endlessly below. The fountains gurgled softly, the scent of roses and wet earth heavy in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cried. She wanted normalcy, wanted something to anchor her in a world that had become impossibly dangerous. But she knew better. Normal didn't exist here. The sound of footsteps broke her reverie. She tensed. Park Joon-ho appeared at the doorway, framed in the dim light. His suit was impeccable, the black fabric absorbing the light around him. His eyes were unreadable, but the faint curve of his mouth suggested amusement, or was it warning? "You're thinking too much," he said softly, stepping closer. "And thinking too much gets people killed in my world." Amina pulled back instinctively. "And what do you suggest?" "That I stop? That I pretend everything is fine while people are trying to kill me?" He chuckled, low and dangerous. "Pretend? No. Survive. Adapt. Use the fear, it's a weapon if you know how to hold it." Her jaw tightened. His confidence, the way he moved as if the world belonged to him, grated against her stubborn independence. And yet, she couldn't deny that he was fascinating. Dangerous, yes. Terrifying, certainly. But fascinating. Park Joon-ho's gaze lingered on her longer than it should have. "You're stubborn," he said finally. I like that. But stubborn alone won't save you. You need information. And that, he tapped the side of his head, is where my people come in. He led her through the sprawling halls, past rooms that gleamed with wealth and power. Each hallway seemed to hum with secrets, doors slightly ajar, shadows that lingered too long, faint whispers that vanished when she looked closer. In the strategy room, he gestured for her to sit. Screens lined the walls, displaying maps, photos, and surveillance feeds. Men and women moved quietly, but their eyes darted to Park Joon-ho whenever he spoke, waiting for his approval. You want revenge, he said, voice low, almost intimate. I can give it to you. But the truth is, someone in my circle betrayed you. Someone close. And if we want to find them, you'll need to work with me. Amina's mind whirled. Work with you? You're the Dawn. You control everything. I barely exist here. Why would I trust you? Because, he leaned closer, his presence overwhelming, I have the means to protect you. And you have the fire to see this through. Together, we're unstoppable. The tension between them thickened, charged, unspoken. He was danger, power, dominance, and she was drawn to him despite every instinct screaming to run. The knowledge made her sick with both desire and fear. Park Joon-ho handed her a file. The photographs inside were of her family. Scenes from that night. Faces, places, fragments of a memory she had tried to bury. Her fingers shook as she scanned them, each image another blade in her chest. This is only the beginning, he said quietly. If you want answers, you need to trust me. Amina's throat was dry. Trust you? I barely know you. And you, she stopped herself. She almost said, and you killed my family, but she didn't. She couldn't. Not yet. Before she could speak further, an alarm shrieked through the estate. Red lights flashed, casting everything in a hellish glow. Park Joon-ho's expression hardened instantly. They're inside, he said, voice tight. Not an intruder this time. Someone from my inner circle. Her stomach dropped. The betrayal he had hinted at, the danger closer than she'd imagined, it wasn't abstract anymore. It was here, in the room with them. Park Joon-ho moved with speed that blurred the edges of her vision, and Amina followed instinctively. Adrenaline coiled around her spine, sharp, intoxicating. They reached the control room, where monitors flickered with faces she didn't recognize, masked, armed, precise. They've compromised the estate, Park Joon-ho said, his voice a growl. We have hours, maybe minutes, before they get what they want. Amina realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about survival, about navigating a world she didn't understand, with a man whose power both terrified and mesmerized her. Park Joon-ho's eyes found hers again, sharp and commanding. If we survive this, you'll see the truth. And the truth is uglier than you imagine. Amina swallowed, her pulse hammering in her ears. And if we don't? Park Joon-ho's lips curved into a dangerous half-smile. Then you'll learn the hard way that this world doesn't forgive. And neither do I. A scream echoed from the corridors. The sound was close. Terrifying. Familiar. The intruders moved fast, silent, and deadly. Park Joon-ho grabbed her hand. His grip was iron, grounding her, warning her. Stay with me, he ordered, almost a growl. And don't let go. No matter what. Amina's mind raced, heart in overdrive, senses straining. She didn't want to admit it, but the thought of being separated from him even now made a cold fear settle in her chest. The danger wasn't just outside the walls anymore. It was in every shadow, every glance, every unspoken secret in this mansion. The monitors flickered. A figure appeared on screen, someone she recognized instantly. One of Park Joon-ho's closest allies. The betrayal she had feared was real. The enemy was here, in his house, smiling behind a mask of loyalty. Park Joon-ho's eyes narrowed. I should have known. Someone close, always close. And now, he let the sentence hang, dangerous, unfinished. Amina's stomach twisted. Her world had shifted again. Trust was a weapon she couldn't afford. And yet, the pull toward him, toward the man behind the dawn, made her want to follow him blindly, even into danger. They moved through the mansion like shadows, silent, tense, hearts beating in sync with the distant alarms. Each step brought them closer to the traitor, and closer to a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew. And then, just as they reached the door of the main vault, a hand shot out from the darkness, catching Park Joon-ho by the throat. Amina froze. The struggle was brief, brutal, and terrifying. Park Joon-ho's roar filled the room, but he was pinned, helpless for the first time in her presence. And then she saw it. The glint of a knife, the flash of recognition in the eyes of the traitor, someone she had been told she could trust. The betrayal wasn't just a possibility. It was here, in front of her. And Amina realized, with a sick twist of fate, that surviving the Dawn's world would require more than courage. It would require her heart. Amina's heart was a drum in her chest, each beat threatening to tear her apart. The traitor's knife glinted in the dim light as he lunged at Park Joon-ho. Time slowed, and she felt every inch of the room, the cold marble beneath her feet, the metallic scent of danger in the air, the heat of Park Joon-ho's body straining against the attacker. Instinct took over. She grabbed a nearby steel rod from the wall and swung it with everything she had. The blade clattered harmlessly to the floor. Park Joon-ho recovered instantly, his hands gripping the traitor's throat. A fight broke out in a blur of motion, Park Joon-ho's controlled, lethal power against the desperation in the man who had once been trusted. Amina's eyes darted around. The screens lining the walls flashed warnings, alarms, movement, unauthorized access. The house, their sanctuary, had become a cage. When the traitor finally fell unconscious at Park Joon-ho's feet, Amina dropped the rod, shaking. Her hands trembled, her lungs burned. She looked at Park Joon-ho and saw something she hadn't seen before, vulnerability. For a split second, he was human, raw, and exposed. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. She swallowed hard. Yes. You?" Park Joon-ho's gaze lingered on her, piercing and unyielding. "Better now that you're alive." The words, meant to reassure, had the opposite effect. Amina's stomach twisted, heat rushing to her cheeks. She wanted to tell herself it was the adrenaline talking. She wanted to believe she wasn't falling for him. But the way he looked at her, the way his hand brushed against hers as he steadied her, said otherwise. They didn't have time to explore emotions. The estate was crawling with threats, and the betrayal in Park Joon-ho's inner circle meant the danger was no longer external, it was everywhere. Park Joon-ho led her deeper into the mansion, to a secure room that even she hadn't seen before. It smelled of paper, leather, and something metallic, fear, perhaps, bottled into files and folders. "You need to know the truth," Park Joon-ho said, locking the door behind them. "The fire that killed your family, it wasn't random. Someone wanted you out of the way. Someone powerful. Someone who knows me intimately." Amina's stomach dropped. "You mean, someone you trust?" Park Joon-ho nodded grimly. "Yes. Someone I've worked with for years. Someone I never suspected. Until now." Her hands trembled as she flipped through a folder. Names, dates, transactions. Pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed. Each revelation cut deeper than the last. It's all connected, she whispered. But why me? Why my family? Park Joon-ho stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because you were always meant to be part of this world. And because they wanted to hurt me through you. Revenge, control, fear. Classic motives in our line of work. Amina's mind reeled. Her anger, her grief, her thirst for vengeance, it all collided with something far more complicated, the undeniable attraction she felt toward the man standing in front of her. She hated him and wanted him at the same time. She hated him for taking control, for being the Don, for being everything she despised, and yet, she couldn't deny that there was a part of her that longed for him. Park Joon-ho studied her silently, the quiet tension between them almost unbearable. He stepped closer, just enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You're dangerous," he said finally. "You know that?" "I've survived worse," she shot back, masking the flutter in her chest with bravado. He smirked. "I've noticed. And that's why I like you." Her pulse jumped. She wanted to tell him to stop, to step back, but the pull was magnetic. Their proximity made the air crackle with tension, electric and consuming. Before she could respond, or run, another sound cut through the room, the faint click of a lock. Park Joon-ho's eyes went cold. He moved like lightning to the door, pushing Amina behind him. Another figure stepped into the room, masked and silent. The air grew thick with threat. "You didn't think it would be that easy, did you?" the intruder hissed. Park Joon-ho's hand went to the gun at his hip. Amina's stomach lurched as the masked figure raised their weapon. She wanted to scream, to fight, but Park Joon-ho's commanding grip on her shoulder froze her. "You need to trust me," he murmured, low and urgent. Amina nodded, barely breathing. She did trust him, not fully, but enough to follow his lead. The figure moved closer, and Park Joon-ho's eyes narrowed. Recognition flickered, just for a second. "You," he said, voice tight. "I should have seen it coming." The intruder's mask tilted, revealing a familiar face. Someone she had seen in the files earlier. Someone she had assumed was loyal. Betrayal, thick and suffocating, filled the room. Amina's mind raced. She had wanted revenge, clarity, answers, and now the enemy was staring her down, right in front of her. The intruder lunged. The room erupted into chaos. Gunfire, screams, crashing furniture. Park Joon-ho moved with lethal precision, deflecting attacks, pushing Amina out of harm's way. She ducked behind a desk, heart hammering. And then she saw it. The intruder wasn't just after Park Joon-ho, they were after her too. Every movement, every swing, every shot aimed at her. The fire that had destroyed her family wasn't random, and the threat now mirrored that past terror. Amina felt a cold realization settle in her bones. The past wasn't over. It had followed her here. Park Joon-ho's hand gripped hers, pulling her toward the window. "Jump," he ordered. "What?" she gasped. "Now. Trust me." Adrenaline took over. She followed him, feeling the rush of air, the vertigo of falling, the heart-stopping terror of trusting a man who was both her protector and her enemy. They landed in the shadows of the estate gardens, breathless, hearts racing. The intruder had disappeared inside the mansion, leaving chaos behind. Amina looked at Park Joon-ho, shaking, her mind a storm of fear, anger, and something she refused to name. We survived," she whispered. Park Joon-ho's gaze was dark, intense, unreadable. "For now," he said. But the real fight, the real enemy, hasn't shown their hand yet. And when they do... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The danger, the betrayal, the world they were trapped in, it was enough. Amina's chest tightened. She realized that nothing about this life would be simple. Survival, revenge, love, it was all tangled in a way she wasn't prepared for. And yet, in the chaos, in the danger, she felt something she hadn't in years, the stirring of hope. Hope, and a spark she wasn't ready to admit.
We don't have time. Let's leave this place.
Amina's palms were damp around the dossier, the proof her family had been targeted. The city roared beyond the glass walls of Don Park Joon-ho's penthouse, but inside, everything felt too still, too charged. Park Joon-ho stood behind her, silent and intense. He was a man who lived in control, every movement calculated, every emotion buried deep. But tonight, something raw flickered beneath his calm exterior. His eyes held a heat she'd never seen before, one that mirrored the storm rising inside her. When she turned, the dossier slipped, and his hand caught hers. The brush of his fingers sent a spark racing up her arm. She should have stepped back. Instead, she moved closer, drawn to him with a gravity she couldn't fight. "Amina," he murmured, low and unsure for the first time. She rose onto her toes, her breath mingling with his. Their foreheads touched, a quiet moment that felt louder than the city below. His restraint cracked, and he pulled her into his arms, not forcefully, but as if he'd been holding back too long. The next moments blurred into breathless closeness. His coat slipped from his shoulders. Her fingers clutched his shirt. Neither spoke, neither needed to. He guided her gently toward the bedroom, their steps slow, hesitant, almost fragile. The world outside faded. The fears, the dossier, the danger, all dissolved into the quiet between their hearts. When they reached the edge of the bed, he paused, searching her face for doubt. She nodded once, steady and sure. They sank onto the bed together, not rushed, not wild, but with the quiet intensity of two people who had been pulled toward this moment long before either admitted it. And for the first time in a long time, Amina allowed herself to exhale. The next morning, they woke up and quickly got dressed. "You ready?" he asked, voice low, a mix of warning and something else. Desire? Fear? A hint of care she couldn't quite name. She swallowed, gripping the folder tighter. "I've waited for this moment for years. I'm ready." Park Joon-ho nodded. No hesitation, and there was no second guessing, it was just the cold certainty of a man who ruled empires with iron hands, and who had chosen her as both weapon and partner. The first step was the enemy's penthouse office, a room that had once seemed untouchable, now vulnerable. Surveillance footage, insider intel, and gut instinct had led them here. And as they approached the sleek, mirrored doors, the truth hit Amina like ice water. The person responsible for her family's death was closer than she'd imagined. Closer than Park Joon-ho even suspected. The doors slid open with a whisper. And there, waiting like a ghost she had never wanted to see again, was her father's former business partner, Vincent Akand. The man who had smiled, consoled, and betrayed her family in one cold motion. "You," Amina's voice cracked, shaking with anger and disbelief. Vincent's lips curled into a smirk that made her skin crawl. "Little Amina," he said, mockingly sweet, "you've grown. Too bad you're standing on the wrong side tonight." Park Joon-ho stepped forward, his presence radiating a quiet threat. "Step away from her." Vincent laughed, a hollow, cruel sound. "Or what? You'll kill me? You don't scare me, Don Park Joon-ho. You never did." The tension snapped. The air thickened. Amina felt the adrenaline surge, her fear morphing into raw, controlled fury. Years of grief, anger, and unanswered questions coalesced into one singular drive: revenge. Without a word, she lunged forward, flipping the table between them with all her strength. Papers flew like confetti, monitors shattered, and Vincent stumbled, just enough for Park Joon-ho to strike. Park Joon-ho moved with the precision of a predator, swift, merciless, but Amina wasn't just a spectator. She fought beside him, her movements sharp, fueled by vengeance, not hesitation. She struck, kicked, and grappled with Vincent, the years of suppressed rage pouring through her fists. "You destroyed my family," she screamed, the sound echoing through the penthouse. "Now you pay." Vincent faltered, surprise flashing in his eyes. He had counted on her being weak, timid, predictable. He hadn't counted on the fire she carried. Park Joon-ho pinned Vincent with a force that could break bone, his grip unwavering. "It ends now," he said, voice low, deadly. Amina stepped closer, hands trembling but determined. She slid the dossier onto Vincent's chest, the files exposing his crimes, his lies, his betrayal. "You will rot behind bars," she hissed. "No money, no power, no empire. Just justice." Vincent's laughter died, replaced by a look of fear, real, palpable. And in that moment, Amina felt a strange, bittersweet release. Years of pain had brought her here, and now she had taken her stand. The chaos didn't end there. Sirens wailed in the distance, police, alerted by Park Joon-ho's preemptive call. The penthouse that had been a den of secrets and power was now a cage for the guilty. Park Joon-ho finally released Vincent, letting him collapse to the ground. He turned to Amina, his chest heaving, hair disheveled, yet utterly composed. The mask was gone, and she saw him fully, the man behind the dawn, the man who had suffered, loved, and lost in ways no one could imagine. "You okay?" he asked, the words soft but edged with an intensity that made her pulse spike. Amina stared at him, chest still racing. I am now," she admitted, the fight leaving her body in tremors. He stepped closer, and this time, there was no fight, no tension, just raw, unguarded closeness. He lifted her chin with a rough hand, their faces inches apart. The world fell away, the sirens, the chaos, the pain of the past. It was only them. "You're incredible," he whispered. "More than I ever imagined." She laughed, a short, bitter sound, then shook her head. "You mean dangerous." "Dangerous," he echoed, smirk curling his lips, "yes. But also, irresistible." For a heartbeat, the walls between them vanished. Amina leaned into him, letting herself feel everything she had denied herself for years: fear, desire, grief, and finally, something like hope. The first kiss was fierce, demanding, a collision of two storms finally finding calm in each other. But even in that moment, Amina's instincts stayed sharp. Danger still lurked in the shadows. Betrayal might have been unveiled tonight, but the streets, the city, the empire, they were never truly safe. Park Joon-ho's arms tightened around her, grounding her. "We've survived worse," he murmured. "And we'll survive this, too." Together, Amina finally allowed herself to hope. She had lost everything once. But now, she had Park Joon-ho, the truth, and the certainty that the man she loved was both her protector and her equal. The empire could wait. The world could wait. Tonight, they had already won. But they had it in mind that someday, the enemy they had conquered would rise again,